Good evening, all, and welcome to Kalbardr's Corner, as we dig into our psyche, touch some toe beans, and definitely unpack some shit. I am Baron Kalbardr Gellir, and for part 2-ish of this book, I am joined once again by former Meridian turned Atlantean, the TARDIS traveler, and the mother of Fae children. Please welcome back Ouyang Taishi. Hey, buddy.
Hi, everybody. Hey. I love that I am the mother of Fae now. That makes me happy.
I mean, it's accurate. I've met your children.
It is accurate. Hi, everybody. I hope you're having a good evening and a wonderful start to your summer.
That's right. So this is part. I said part 2-ish because our part 1 turned into a 2-parter. So this is sort of a part.
If you go with like software development numbering, we're still at 2 because we had like 1 and then 1.5, and now we're at 2. Maybe.
Sure, we'll go with that.
Yeah.
The version 2 release. I got it.
Yeah.
This show should still be in beta. That's where it belongs.
Oh, God. No, we're good. We're good.
All right. So let's do a quick recap. So for those new to this series, this is all about a book. We've read a book in chunks. In this case, we've finished the book now. We're dissecting it and giving our thoughts throughout. If you've read along, please make sure to let us know in the comments. Add your interesting thoughts, any questions you have, and of course, make sure to introduce yourselves. But today's book, for part 375, whatever, is Art and Fear by David Bayles and Ted Orland. And so we're starting on, this is actually part 2 of the book. It is a conveniently placed, I'm gone forever. Conveniently placed part 2 has some interesting. So I find it interesting. Yeah. The actual part 2 is as equally long as part 1 was, but it felt a lot shorter. It's
not as dense. Well, and to be fair, so a little bit more context. So the book is Art and Fear. The first part is really about yourself and all of the sort of internal factors when it comes to art making and fear related to that art making and where that fear comes from and all kinds of things. And there's some external stuff in there too, but it's mostly internal. And then the second part is the outside world and sort of not so much the fear that comes from the outside world, but navigating that world while dealing with the fear and the all the things we've already talked about in the first 2 parts of this series. So I think that's why it felt a little bit smaller or a little shorter, just because I don't want to say it's dessert because it's not, but we've kind of gotten through, the soup course and the main course and the meat of a lot of what's in this. And that's not to say that there's not good stuff in the last half. It's just I think it's more applicable to people who make art outside of an SCA context,
right?
Which is a lot of us, or maybe people who are trying to do art professionally. Definitely people who are trying to do art professionally, for sure. Because it talks about the academic world, the sort of critic world, and all of those things.
Yeah, a lot of it. So again, I approach this as not an artist, traditional artist, right? I don't sell any art mundanely or modernly, and within the SCA, my chosen art style is not what I consider an art. And the whole art craft discussion comes up in this, which I thought
it comes up in this bit.
But I did look at a lot of this when I was reading through the section, because as it applies to IT, which is what I do professionally, is IT and IT project management, and a lot of the concepts that are in there are very similar to what I've dealt with in the IT industry. So I thought that parallel was interesting to look at, because the same problems come up of how we address it. If you look, anybody who's done IT or done sort of that tech support work, the concepts are a lot the same as artists do, of the sort of having to deal with the same problems over and over again, having to invent new things, having to sort of that constant toil. And a lot of times school for us was an adventure to teach. That was the entire purpose of school. So that comes up later in this. So I thought that was really interesting to see a lot of.
Well, I think, and you could argue that the parallels with art making and IT is, you've got to find solutions to problems, and sometimes those problems are like actual like things you can write down. Like, we need to fix this bug, or we need to create this feature. Probably more of the create this feature line of IT and development. We need to create this feature. Okay, how? Whereas from the artistic standpoint, it's, I want to make this art and I have this very vague idea of what I want to do. How do I get it out of my head and into reality? Right. So there is, I'm trying to avoid the C word, but there are some commonalities. I'll use that one.
Right.
There are some commonalities between those two worlds, because it involves that same sort of creation process. One is code and one is maybe a song or a poem or a piece of two-dimensional or visual art, a piece of performance art. It could be it could be anything. So you're trying to take something from the ethereal and make it physical. So
right. For those watching who haven't read the book, creativity is the C word, by the way. I just realized that sounds terrible if you have no context to this. Creativity. No, it's okay.
There is creativity. That word, the word creativity, does not appear at all, even once in this book.
It occurs partially on one page.
That doesn't count. That doesn't count because it's start out. And it's only to say that they haven't said it. Well, because, I'm sure that when we talk about, in the last session, we talked about, the kid who drew in middle school, if you were the sketchbook kid, right, in middle school, and you get labeled, oh, they're so creative. And it just gets wrapped up in your identity. Oh, I'm a creative person. What the fuck does that mean? Creativity is such a broad, ethereal concept.
Right.
Oh my God.
So
anyway.
Before we start, I just noticed something I have to bring up. This is an important fact. I noticed what shirt I was wearing.
What are you wearing? Oh, you're wearing your Bob Ross.
I was like, that's a Bob Ross shirt. We're talking about art. That's hilarious.
I am wearing my cozy cardigan and a weighted blanket and two dogs.
As an artist, I think that's appropriate. These are appropriate parallels here.
Sure.
All right, so we're just going to dive right in. So the first chapter is so all of these are outside facing topics. So the first one is a view into the outside world. Which the first quote is always interesting. I love the quotes in this. You brought up a couple of them.
They're really well done. Yeah.
To see far is one thing, going there is another. So a quote by Brancusi. So it's the idea of you can see it, but getting to your destination is a whole separate piece other than just seeing it, which I thought.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. That. Yes.
Just let that settle for a second.
Yep.
But honestly, so my first highlight, because I've got the first couple here, is connects in well with that. In that there's a moral on 66 that says there's one hell of a lot more to art than just making it. So the whole first section here is talking about, as an artist, and like I said, and I'm translating this to IT, but also translating this back to our sort of SCA artisan community. There's a whole lot more to what we do than just the thing, than just creating the thing, making the cup, fighting the fight, fixing the computer. There's a whole lot more to it than that. When we look at our documentation, the presentation, the teaching, the other bits, and this talks about the idea of you create the art, but then you've got to sell the art and market the art and buy the paints, and
you've got to somehow put it in front of that audience,
right? And
that audience has to see it,
right? Like,
that's all. And so they're talking about the outside world of the gallery business, and you know, if you think about these TikTok people, that's horrible.
those dirty TikTok
those TikTok people. No. But like, I mean, I've been that person, you know, doom scrolling, you know, at 10:30 at night when I should be asleep because I'm old.
That's adorable.
On TikTok.
Thanks, Mom. Moving on.
You're welcome. And I see these wonderful, amazing, creative people who are, or whether they're doing punch needle embroidery. There's this gal in the UK who does anatomical embroidery with beads. It is so cool. And she makes stickers, and she's got this business that she's running out of her house. And they all, you know, feels like everybody does. And you see all the beautiful things that they make, and you're like, yeah, go kill it, crush it, do the thing. And then you think, oh, well, maybe I could do that. And I've had that thought. But then I think, I don't want to do the hustle. I don't want to. I mean, would it be lovely to post something on a preferred social media network and have it go crazy viral if you don't have things locked down like most people do? But whatever. You have something go crazy viral, and all of a sudden, you know, people are knocking down your door for commissions and shit. Yeah, that would be amazing. That would be such a wonderful ego boost. But also, that's a lot of work. You know, like in terms, and not just the art making work of it, but the logistical, you know, like, and I don't have time to be my own marketing department. Right. You know, I'm not trained to do that. I don't want to do that, you know? And so I think that a lot of, and this is outside of ASA context, a lot of art doesn't get in front of an audience because people don't necessarily want to do that with it. You know what I mean? Like, would they say no if it happened to them? Maybe, maybe not. But at the same time, like, you have to make that choice to make it your business. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I don't have the hustle. I don't like the hustle culture anyway. I don't.
It's a very real thing.
Yeah, it's yeah. Oof.
So
it's a lot.
This, I've talked about it before on these shows. The whole YouTube function, right? People, when people come to me for shows, they're like, "Hey, can you help me do this thing?" I'm like, "Yeah." They're, "Oh, we're already so busy." Like, well, yeah, but this will take 10 minutes. Compared to the other stuff I have to do to make these shows function, it's a lot. That 10 minutes of me teaching you how to do the thing or showing you how to make a graphic. It's nothing compared to the other stuff doing the shows. The 1 hour you see here on camera is a quarter what I have to do to make this show function. And it's honestly one reason I do these live is because then there's no editing.
Cuts the work down. There's no editing because you see all these amazing, whether it's the TikTok or the YouTubers who do amazing videos, whether they are just like, hey, sketch with me and we're just going to do this thing. I love Drawing with Waffles. She's amazing and I adore her. Wonderful creator. She's great. But I know that, and whether she's doing the editing or she's outsourcing it, because I know that happens sometimes, she makes the video and then it's got to get edited. The graphics got to get added, all of those things. And there's like, you know, optimal time to post it. And then how do you push it out? All that stuff. Oh my goodness. Like it's a thing. And I admire the artists who do that. That is amazing. I don't think I could do it myself. So, but then I just have to tell the brain weasels who come up, you know, when I'm doom scrolling and they say, well, you could do this. And you like, no, I don't want to. I don't want to.
I think acknowledge it and then go, yes, I can do that and then move on.
But I don't want to, you know, and my art gets in front of enough people, I get enough warm and fuzzies. Would it be lovely to sell something? Yeah, I have a coffee shop. Go buy something if you want to. I don't care. It's sitting in a box.
Here's some stickers. Buy them or not. I
have some stickers. I got a
right.
really super cute Godzilla sticker, but you know what? It's not her. They're sitting in a little bag in a little box, and if somebody buys one, I'll go into that little box and I'll take it out and I'll put it in, and it'll happen, and it'll be fine.
See,
and then I'll go buy it, and then I'll go buy myself a coffee with.
Right. See, that's why I went with Redbubble, because I can just put the graphics up and then I'm done with it. I'm no longer part of the process.
Well, but then even still, I mean, because I also have a Redbubble. I don't have very much on it, but at the same time, like there's still a level of marketing and promotion that you have to do.
Sure, to make it successful. Yeah,
that's the thing. So
no, I created it as a landing page for that very reason. I was like, here's the thing: so when people ask for something, I can put it out there.
Yeah.
But I was like, I'm not going to put the effort into like promote it like I should. I bring it up in these shows.
Okay, but it's not even if you should. It's not even an if you should. It's or like you should. It's if people ask for it, here's where it is.
Right.
You know, like, I mean, that's a good point, Jason, but at the same time, like, I wouldn't expect a friend to just do that for me without some sort of compensation.
Payments and reciprocation.
Because that's work.
Yeah.
That's work.
Right.
You know, like, I'm not going to pass that off on a buddy without like making sure that I make good with that buddy. Right. You know.
Yep.
So sorry.
Yes. Do art if you enjoy it. Don't try to make money off of it unless you're doing that thing as a thing.
I mean, but that's the thing. More power to if you want to. I am not standing in your way. Like, I just fully recognize that myself. That is not a road I need to take.
Right.
But I think that takes a lot of strength, especially because the internet has made that sort of hustle culture so big. You know, like, you know, was that gaslight gatekeep girl boss kind of thing? Sorry.
Like if you start selling your bathwater, we're gonna have a talk, okay?
If we have what?
If you start selling your bathwater, we're gonna talk.
No. But that's the thing. I mean, well, otherwise MLMs wouldn't have caught on the way that they've caught on in the last 10 years or so. But I mean, that kind of culture is so pervasive in our society right now that, and especially even in the art world. So especially with these small times, like, oh, you can make stickers, or you can make pins, or you can, you know, whatever, get an Etsy shop, you know, all that jazz. But and like, you know, oh, you buy a $300 Cricut to make whatever you want to. Well, why aren't you selling something with your Cricut? Why aren't you making, you know, whatever? Because I don't want to, dude. Like, I just want to have it so I don't have to cut out the same felt shape 15 times by hand. Because I'm old.
I have a laser for that. Very
I have a laser for. Oh man, that's a T-shirt. That's what the lasers are. Or that's what the lasers are for.
Lasers are for. I have a sticker. I've got to work on. I've got to figure out the design for it. But it's something about being an asshole. It's like, I'm that kind of asshole. Is the phrasing, and it's from His Excellency, or his soon-to-be Excellency Canute. And I had a fun conversation about being that kind of asshole. Because occasionally you've got to be that kind of asshole. It's a good sticker.
I didn't realize that there were varieties.
There are varieties. Oh, it's a thing.
Vintages?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Moving on. All right.
Anyway.
So my next one's on 69.
Yeah.
Nice. So it's in the common ground. I just heard Kisa laugh in the other room. That's funny. So it's in the sort of common ground. It talks about censorship, which I think is really interesting. Again, not as applicable to us, but the idea was
the whole like pushing boundaries and
Right. But so the quote I pulled was, "It is the world, but despite its richness and variability, the well-defined world we inherit does not quite fit each one of us individually." So we talked about this some last time, the idea that each of us as artists are approaching even the exact same thing is going to have our own thing on it. So art in itself, and this is sort of getting into the next section, is changed by the artist. But the idea with that is that the world, how you and I conceptualize the world, and there's a whole like Buddhist philosophy here of we're all part of the same world, just experiencing it in two different directions, is different for you and I. So even the same piece of art, same video, same canvassing tools, our worlds are different enough that our art will be different. Insert whatever you want as art here, but same thing.
Yeah. Well, because our perspectives are different.
Right.
So there's a wonderful quote from Zora Neale Hurston about everybody having a spice box, and your spice box is built based on, your experiences, people you've met, etc. And that is how you flavor your world. That is how you see things through your spice box.
Right.
And I like that because because it's an amalgamation of things. It's your childhood, it's formative experiences, it's formative relationships, and all of those things go into how you see this. So even though you might have very similar spices to your best friend or your sibling or whatever, they're still different enough that they're gonna be different, especially when it comes to art making. When you're taking a prompt and you're responding to it, because that is filtered entirely through you. That's one of the reasons why I love challenges like Inktober and things like that, because everybody has the same prompt and responds to it differently. You see less of it in like the Scribble challenges that you see like around around coronations and whatnot, to like kind of drive putting stuff in the blank cases. But I think just because those categories have been defined that way and have been there for so long, that it's sort of like, this is what is expected.
Yeah, when they say make a meridian cross, but although I have seen,
but they might be like best bird, and it's like, okay, well, it's a bird. You want a bird? Like, that's what you want. Yeah,
you occasionally get one that's completely different, but generally you're going to get this bucket of stuff, right?
Yeah, and that's okay. I'm not disparaging. I just think it would be interesting. You see it, I think, more in Bardic, the twist on that. But I feel like Bardic has a little bit more innate flexibility than Scribble maybe does, just because of the nature of Scribble in the SCA.
There's nobody cares, and I say that, and I say nobody cares. Hold on.
Ouch!
Let me clarify. Nobody cares about the outcome on that. Like, so if I'm producing a scroll, it's going to someone that will then care about it. My Bardic performance, I'm the only one that cares about it. There is the audience, whereas the audience reception is important and part of the Bardic performance. If they're not going to be let down by it. Whereas if I put a crappy scroll in the box, and somebody gets a crappy scroll, then they're let down by the crappy scroll. Whereas if I perform a crappy song, meh, it's not a huge deal. I think that's the difference to me.
It's easier to let that roll off your back as opposed to, yeah.
Which is why
we can have a different conversation. We can have a different conversation about crappy scrolls.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I air quoted that. I don't know how to define a crappy scroll.
That is a rabbit hole that I am acknowledging exists, and I am steering away from.
Fair enough. Moving on. All right. What you got?
Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm next. My highlight is on 71.
Go for it.
So this was not a surprise to Cal, nor will it be to any of you out there in video land who know me. Good artists thrive on exhibit and publication deadlines, on working 20 hours straight to see the pots are glazed and fired just so, on making their next work better than their last. The urge to compete provides a source of raw energy, and for that purpose alone, it can be exceptionally useful. I can say words. In a healthy artistic environment, that energy is directed inward to fulfill one's own potential. In a healthy artistic environment, artists are not in competition with each other.
Shenanigans. I'm just going to go ahead and say it.
I very, very much love a deadline, even if it's a self-imposed deadline, because then I get shit done. But I also have to remind myself that if I make the deadline, I have the ability to change the deadline because I made it. But how many of us have sat in a hotel room or in a car or in somebody's living room the night before an event or on the way to an event, frantically hemming or finishing embroidering or finishing the project that you're about to like put into ANS competition.
Yeah,
like
writing a litany, writing a poem. Yeah. The whole
oh my God. Oh, don't even get me started on bardic composition in vehicles. Like that's a thing. Bards might as well shower in the car. It's the same vibe. I mean, but no, that sort of like adrenaline to a deadline is very much a thing. I'm one of those people that thrives on ANS competitions because I see it as I am competing with myself. I have entered the same thing, like iterations of the same thing multiple times because, okay, I entered it once and then I learned a thing from a judge and then I did that thing and then I entered it again, like with the updated documentation and everything because I learned the thing and because I wanted to see the I've done that at least with 2 different projects that I can think of.
The goal being, and I'm going to Eric with this, perfection when you're done with it, right? That's the goal.
I mean, yeah, but by a rubric standard, yes. Is it ever 100% perfect? There's always room to improve. There's always. As somebody who has gotten a perfect ANS score, there is always room for improvement. My stitches could always be neater. They always could. I'm sorry. I'm not a machine. And for the record, I am not a garb laurel. That is not what I have the laurel in. I am not a garb laurel.
If you have made garb and you are a laurel, those are not the same thing.
I am a nerd laurel.
Yeah, sure.
So that is what I am.
So
no.
Okay, but in that case, so yes, we're competing with ourselves.
Yeah.
But here's the giant but here.
The keyword is healthy. The keyword is healthy.
So we have competitions, and how do we keep those competitions within the SCA context? Because we have them. We have Scrabble challenges with a winner. Mm-hmm. We have ANS competitions with a winner. We have these fairs with a winner. There's always a winner. And even if it's just a pat on the back or a high five, somebody's getting something out of it other than just the scores. Right. How do we keep that healthy?
So there's 2 authors to this book. They are both he's, as far as I'm aware.
There.
But they go on to talk about, because like the very, very next bit after the bit that I just talked about, the highlighted was, unfortunately, healthy artistic environments are about as common as unicorns. Like they fully recognize that this is the ideal. This is the ideal. This is how it should be. Is that the way it is? Hardly ever. So I think it's.
So it's funny that I highlighted the next section of that, talking about the awards and judging the people.
So yeah,
the ideal part of that.
Is it on 72? About
it's 71. So it's easier to rate artists. Okay. Easier to rate artists in terms of recognition they received. Blah blah. And when that happens, competition centers not on making work, but on collecting symbols of acceptance and approval of the work. So in our case, we're talking about the meridian crosses, the ovos, the laurels, the perfect.
I don't even think it's that. It's the I won this. I was really super surprised to get an actual scroll when I won an ANS competition. I was like, cool. Like that was a surprise because I'm so used to just like you get called up in court and it's like, hey, you won, yay. Right. Or if you won because somebody picked you, you get. Because that's what it is. When you win a Scrabble competition, like there's a group of people who are like who sponsored that category that you entered into, and they get to pick who the winner is. Like, and that's fine. I would hypothesize that that's arguably even a period practice of No,
it's patronage.
It's patronage. It's patronage, and that's why I say that because it's patronage. So yeah, if you made the best Anglo-Saxon scroll, here you get this fancy Anglo-Saxon thing. Cool, dude. Like that's awesome. And if you didn't want that thing, then you wouldn't have entered that category. And we see that also a lot with Scrabble challenges, at least the last few Meridian Scrabble challenges that I like paid any attention to, where if you could tell if somebody really wanted a particular reward, like a particular gift basket or whatever was advertised as like, and a lot of times someone's like, yeah, I'll sponsor a challenge, but I don't know what I'm giving yet.
There'll be a prize coming. Yeah.
You'll get something. I don't know what it is. But someone will basically bomb the competition in the sense of to just like enter a million things into every category.
Right.
You know, which, okay, cool. You really want to win something. 100% can respect that. And I'm also not bad because you contributed 50 scrolls to the cases, which really needed them. So yay, thank you. You know, you're donating your time and your energy and your art to this cause. And that's ultimately what it is. It's just a scroll drive. So I'm not even really upset that they're sort of kind of trying to game the game in that sense.
But it is at that point, the minute you add rules to something, the minute you add a win, and that's, I guess, that's where I have a problem with our regular ANS fairs having a winner, is the minute you put a winner on it, then the rules matter, and it's my autism speaking. It's my like rules oriented person. Like I go into a rule set, I go into a game and go, okay, what are the rules, and how do I win?
Yeah.
I don't care. That's
well, and I mean, and if the only win of it is just the recognition, and I mean, the Scribble stuff is pretty. It doesn't like, I don't even know if they announce it in court anymore. I think it just gets announced like afterward on Facebook.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure the only people who care about are other scribes, you know. But it's honestly one of the only ways that scribes really get to showcase what they're doing, you know, outside of one of their pieces getting used for an award.
Right. Which happens, and getting the names read and having them go up in our Scribble gallery is great. Right? We see that.
That's fine. Yeah.
So then we start comparing ourselves as artists. So when I'm looking at myself as an artist in my ANS career path, I'm going to start comparing myself to those people who have equivalent awards to me. Right. So I have a Meridian Cross. I'm going to look at the other Meridian Cross level people. Right. Because I'm comparing based on award levels. Right. Because that's our scale. So if I'm making garb, and that's my art thing, and I compare, and I look at a garb laurel, right? There should be a difference here, right?
Assuming that they're doing the same kind of garb that you're doing.
Sure, I'm assuming equivalencies here just because it's easier for the conversation.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
so I think that's the idea of we're looking at these award structures is we're.
So I think a lot of it depends on how you react. So like, I cannot tell you the number of times that I have been at an event and whether it's been a competition entry or just seeing somebody's work, whether that was in the context of like, again, a competition entry or just seeing it because it was presented in court or, you know, I came across it, whatever. I can't tell you the number of times I have walked away feeling both like I eat paste, like that little kid from The Simpsons. I can't think of his name. I love him. And also this can happen and I cannot exchange a single word with that person, right? Like I literally just like see them in passing or see their stuff. I don't have to talk to them at all, but I will feel A, like I eat paste, and then B, like, get your fucking shit together and do better, Marty. Like it's that weird sort of inspiration and that drive to do better. Like they are doing such a cool job. They're doing such a great thing. You can do better. You can do that. You can also reach that level, and it kicks my ass into gear. I'm sorry. We started cursing and it's only 9:30.
I was going to say, calm down, Ouyang. We're good.
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying, like, it is that sort of like kick in my ass. It's an inspirational kick in the ass, but it's definitely a kick in the ass. And I could easily walk away from that feeling bitter and angry, but I don't. It's like, no, hey, I'm inspired. Like that is so freaking cool. Like, and even if it's something that's not even related to anything that I do, it's just a really cool niche thing. Like they're doing their cool niche thing. What the heck, Marty? Where's your cool niche thing? Why aren't you doing something? You know, like, okay, self, I hear you. Like, let's go make some plans. You know.
So speaking of on 72.
That was my next.
That you're not getting your fair share of recognition leads to anger and bitterness.
Yes.
Fear that you're not as good as your fellow artists leads to depression.
I feel like that's something that a lot of Skadians get trapped in.
Yeah.
And it's when you're in that spot, it is a hard spot to be in. And it sucks. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what else to say. It sucks.
I guess that's my problem with the competition. And you know, everybody always asks if you could wave your magic wand tomorrow, what would you fix, right? And that's something I would fix. Is I would remove the idea of competitions from our art because whereas if you get two humans in a room, they're always gonna create each other. I can't stop.
So how would you so for me, and I recognize that I don't like the aspect of if there's a winner, right? Like I don't feel like those scores need to be publicized. You know, the people who need to know those scores are the judges and the person who ran the competition, the entrant, the judges. You know, if you want to post them up on the Kingdom ANS site, if it's a Kingdom ANS fair, if you want to post it on Kingdom ANS site later, public, go for it. You know, I don't know if it needs to be announced in court other than, hey, we had this many entries and they were all really cool. I hope everybody got a chance to look at them.
Right.
You know, because we have other methods for that kind of recognition.
Declaring the winner is making it adversarial, and it doesn't need to be.
Because otherwise, the feedback is really great, and that's the thing that I get scared of. People are like, "Oh, we shouldn't have ANS competitions." It's like, hey, what are you going to replace that feedback mechanism with? Like, that's my question.
And I'm honestly not saying remove the fair. The fair concept works. It's the
but fairs don't get feedback. Fairs don't get feedback because fairs aren't judged.
Hold on.
That's the thing.
Time out. the whole thing. Keep the current thing as is, right? Everything as is. Remove the idea of a winner.
Perfect. I'm good with that.
No prizes,
I'm 100% fine with that.
Nothing. Remove that completely. Yeah. So the only thing you get is your feedback.
Because honestly, what happens because I don't know how, I've never run an ANS competition like at a Kingdom level. So like what happens when you have, and say they're not even perfect scores, right? Say you have 2 15s. Your highest scores are tied. And they're in two completely different categories. And honestly, even at a dog show, this is the best thing I can compare it to, and I recognize that's weird, but like you watch the best in show competition of a dog show, they're still being judged to their own breed standards.
Correct.
Right?
To the rubric.
Otherwise, to the rubric for their breed standards. Right. Because otherwise it is impossible to judge a Doberman and a Pomeranian like against each other. Like this doesn't work, you know? It's just, is this Doberman a better Doberman than that Pomeranian is the best Pomeranian? Like I don't envy those judges. That's hard to do. So the only way we're doing that is based on the scores that you get, which again are completely against your rubric, and rubrics can change from category to category depending on the kingdom that you're in. Right. So I don't like the concept of like a publicized winner. If you want to post what everybody scored later, I don't care. I think that'd be great because then you can see how other people did. Like if you saw, your buddy that you couldn't, go and talk to at the event, you want to see how they did. Cool, that's awesome. Post it. But it doesn't need to be a court thing.
Seeing the notes would be useful too. Like seeing here's the documentation and here's the rubric of why they got scored. I would like that personally. I get some people wouldn't, and that's fine. Like I wouldn't mind.
I would want an entrant, both entrants and judges, to like sign off on that.
Oh, sure.
Because sometimes, especially in a face-to-face judging, sometimes that can be it's a personal conversation that you're having.
Sure.
From an entrance perspective or even from a judge perspective, and a lot of times there's like, and not to say that most people who judge, like you can get their contact information. That's not a big deal. But like, you're putting your contact information on that form. So you're like, follow up and get more stuff from me later, and a lot of it is just, you geek out with somebody for half an hour. You judge.
Right. There would need to be some sort of adjustments for it. But like I said, the concept of seeing why they got a 15 or a 12 or a whatever.
So you might be able to see like the breakdowns of like you got it because they got a 4 in this one and then a 3 in this one and then maybe a lower score somewhere else. You might be able to see that. I doubt you'd get notes.
Correct.
You might be able to see score breakdown.
That's too much work. I agree.
That's because I don't want to make anybody have to transcribe our crazy handwriting on judging forms because I can barely read it. So.
But so I think looking at that, if we could remove the idea of the winner and keep it to be for the love of the art, and God, that sounded hokey.
Well, but it's and for the self-improvement aspect of it, because you need feedback. Right. And that's something that's in the first part. We need an audience, and sometimes that and a critical audience is going to be a judge or somebody who you've said, hey, can you look at this critically and give me feedback to tell me, where I've done wrong and what I can do better, right, and what I did that's going in the right direction, as somebody who's gone down this path or a similar one before,
So to equate it to fighting a little bit, so like obviously we have tournaments in fighting, and I think a lot of the ANS people, I hear the gnashing of teeth start when, well, yeah, but the fighters get a winner. Why don't we get a winner? I get it, right? So I feel like when I look at fighting too, the idea that I won a tournament is cool, right? Just because I did bad that day or didn't win that day doesn't mean that my fighting was not better, or did not improve something, right? So the idea of winning is hard.
You could argue that the same axiom would hold to ANS competitions.
Correct. And that's and if we're going to have a winner, then we've got to figure out how to get that idea instilled that admittedly the fighters don't even do it well with. So I don't know how we're going to do it with the artists. So that's a whole thing. Artists
are squishy, and it's hard to talk about this stuff, which is why this book is so good.
Fair.
But
read it.
Because it's a personal sort of reckoning that you have to come to, to say like, hey, I'm quoting myself. One thing that I tell my kids all the time is I remind them, the only person that you can control is you. You are the only person that you have any semblance of control over.
Yep.
Focus on that. So like you can't control how judges or whoever's going to perceive the thing that you did. All you can control is yourself and what you put out there. So if you focus on that,
this is my wife.
Yeah.
Everybody needs therapy.
I am not a licensed therapist. Please don't take any of my advice.
Nope.
In that vein. I am nowhere near that.
My advice. That's a fair statement. All right.
Don't do it. My advice is weighted blankets and puppies. That is my advice.
It's just good advice. I can do a lot of the puppies because they smell like tuna, apparently.
They don't anymore. I think just somebody was farty earlier, but we're okay now.
That's good. All right,
yes.
What you got next for me?
My next bit is on 73.
Yep.
In not knowing how to tell yourself that your work is okay, you may be driven to the top of the heap in trying to get the rest of the world to tell you. Yeah, sit with that one. And that's hard. Internal self-confidence that comes from inside as opposed to affirmation that comes from outside. That's hard. That's why social media has exploded the way it has, is because we want that affirmation from other people. We want those likes and little hearts and things. We want to know that we're okay, because we have a hard time listening to ourselves to hear it from ourselves.
By the way, please like and subscribe to this
do all the YouTube things. Please feed Cal's ego.
Don't say that.
Boy. He's a tender boy.
I am a tender boy.
But no, for real, it's hard. It's hard.
Right.
And I think that part of that, again, for me, ties back into the reason why somebody would enter an ANS competition. You don't, in my mind, you shouldn't enter an ANS competition for acclaim or, because you want to win it.
Right.
You enter the ANS competition because you did a thing and you want to show it. You want to showcase what you've done because you want feedback on it, because you want to know if it's as good as you think it is. And also you want to see what the next steps are, right? Because a lot of this book talks about, you make art and then it's a continual process. You don't stop.
Right.
And you're learning from what you're doing. Every piece teaches you something. And sometimes you need somebody else to help you see what it is that you need to do next.
Mm-hmm.
That isn't always the case, but sometimes it's helpful to get that perspective.
Right. Well,
I've interrupted you a couple times.
No, but in our art, I think, and this may be the difference in modern art stylings versus what a lot of what we do in the recreation side, is in recreations, we do sort of have again, I'll air quote perfect here. We have a goal we're working to. whereas all of it is made by our hands with our environment and our world put into it, there is still some extent we're basing that off of, in a rubric that we are at least writing the documentation for, right?
Right.
The project doesn't change based on the rubric, but the documentation does, or it should at least.
I mean, maybe.
It should. I mean, if we have a rubric, if a rubric says XYZ, your documentation should say XYZ. Yes, the words you use will be different than my words, but all the main points should be there.
Yeah, I guess to me, documentation. So I know that documentation is a spot on most rubrics. Like, here is where we judge your documentation. Documentation is such a meta aspect of an entry, like, because literally, even in face-to-face judging, all of the information that you have about an entry comes from either the entry that itself or the documentation. Right. Those are the only two methods of communication. And honestly, the documentation is a lot better about communicating than the item itself. Because guess what? It has words. Like,
pants don't talk that well.
Pants don't talk. So I can look at the pants and I can see the thing. I'm like, okay, it looks like this is what happened.
Right.
And then if I go to the documentation and it says, and this is what happened, like, okay, yeah, I see that. Like, cool. I can draw on those lines. But if I look at it, like, it looks like this is what happened, and the documentation says something else completely is what happened. I'm like, is it though? Like,
right?
Because that's not what it looks like. And then I start to think someone's lying to me, and I don't like that feeling. Please don't do it.
Don't lie to your judges.
No,
also, I'm going to throw this on the screen. If anybody wants to draw a little creature in the series,
oh no!
I will produce it as a sticker and give you a proceeds off of the sales of that sticker, because that's amazing. Also, we also need a Pants Don't Talk sticker, apparently.
Pants Don't Talk.
Pants Don't Talk.
If your pants talk,
it's a
get
whole
help.
thing.
Call 911.
Call your local seneschal.
Please, no, don't bother them. Don't bother them. Like, actual authorities.
Seneschal@meridies.org if your pants talk.
Oh, no.
Mittens will love it.
No, she won't. I'm so sorry, Mittens. Sorry.
It's okay. She's already had a bunch of emails because of me recently, so at least that one.
Oh gosh. Okay.
All right. So
my next highlight is on 76.
Well, good God. You said you have all the things. Come on, what you got? Because my next one's 82. 83 is two short ones.
Work that was driven by issues arising from the relationship between the artist and the work, or the artist and the materials, or the artist and the subject matter rings true. This is talking about like sources of work, right? Okay. So like work, that sort of authenticity, like, oh, this is a real thing, I guess, if it's between you and your work or subject matter, etc. And then it goes on to talk about other well springs that are utility and ritual. And I highlighted that because I think that speaks a lot. And this is, again, talking about it in sort of like I don't know if contemporary is the right word, because like modern and contemporary are different art periods, and I can never remember. In
our case, we say modern as in not SCA.
Yeah, not like actual modern art, because that's a whole thing. I didn't go to art school, can you tell? Right. But because a lot of the work that we are looking at for inspiration, because there are people who are doing original stuff, right? And, whether that's in the bardic sphere or, people who are making reliquaries, it might be inspired by something extant, but it is its own thing, right? Those are all pieces that are steeped in, and it's to do with patronage and just the way art was in period, ritual or utility, like whether pottery, furniture, other sort of, decorative arts, clothing, versus, those ritual objects, whether that's a book, a piece of music, a piece of poetry, all of those things. And so I think that's, And I also wonder, this book is not super new. I think we looked at when it was published last time. It's been printed 12 times. It's been around a while.
93.
Yeah, 93. So I think that we're and call it, art sticker culture, for lack of a better word. We're seeing maybe a slide more towards embracing utility again, right, in terms of seeing that as art, because, we are seeing, people who are doing handcrafted pottery and glass blowing and all of this really cool stuff. And yeah, it's art. It has a purpose, but it's still an object that has, it's still a beautiful handcrafted piece of art, and it just so happens that it's a piece of art that I can put bread on, Right. And even from a ritual side of things, I can't speak to the Christian experience. I'm Jewish, and there's a whole lot of art that goes into Judaica, whether it's, again, cups, plates, various other ritual objects. There's jewelry. It's beautiful, beautiful stuff that is amazing. And we'll get into craft. It's got amazing craftsmanship, but it's still got, somebody had a connection with their faith and then created this object. And yes, it's within the defines of this is what this object needs in order to be a ritual object, because there's rules, because it's Judaism and we like rules. It's just part, and we like to argue about the rules, by the way, like that's a thing too. So, but that's such a rich part of that tradition. And I think that's really cool and inspiring. And there's always room for more. Like, one of my favorite pieces of art in my home, it's over there on that wall, is my ketubah. It's my marriage contract. And it's a piece of art, and it's got wonderful words on it about, what I'm doing, that day with my husband. But it's also this beautiful piece of art that is a ritualistic object that if I ever wanted a divorce, then has a very, very important role to play. So like, it's fine. I'm very happily married. We're good.
Okay, but now do you set it on fire? Is it like swords involved?
I think it gets cut or torn in a specific way. I haven't looked it up recently because I'm not needing to know. Right. But it gets destroyed.
But Jake should know. Start checking the history. If he ever sees that search in there, he should know something.
But there's also the aspect of like it's a piece of it is my marriage contract. It's not his marriage contract. It's not our marriage contract. It's mine. Like it belongs to me. Right. So, and if you ever just want to fall down a rabbit hole, if you search for ketubah, or ketubot, they are beautiful. They are absolutely gorgeous. And you can get very unique with them, and so that's just a fun thing. So I love that they included that. And I think that I'm curious if they were to do like a revised edition, how their attitudes toward ritual and utility and craft, for that matter, if they would remain like, oh yes, this is this archaic thing. Like, no, because I think it's still a thing.
Well, it's okay. So I'm going to skip ahead because there was a quote that I highlighted about that. So there's this is art, this is craft section.
Yeah. Okay, that's quite a bit ahead.
We'll jump back. It's on 98. Difference between 5 Steinway grand pianos, demonstrably works of consummate craftsmanship, are small compared to the difference between the 5 Beethoven piano concerti. You might perform on those instruments. So the idea, it's comparing 5 pianos made by a craftsman, by an artist,
an amazing craftsman. Yeah, yes,
right, that by themselves are admittedly works of art, compared to 5 Beethoven concertos, which are not repeatable. Like you can't make that again without it being the same thing. And then
even if it was the same person playing it each time.
Right. Yeah. So it's like so the concept there, I think that's for me is that again that definition of utility versus non-utility. If it is a non-utility thing, a thing that can't be used other than for visual, auditory, tactile enjoyment, right? That is art. If it's a thing,
do you have to enjoy it though? Do you have to enjoy it?
Enjoyment could be a bad too. Like, I'm using enjoyment as a Kinsey scale.
A very broad term. Okay.
Because like I could be like, that's shitty. I don't like it. That's still enjoyment. It's just like negative enjoyment. You know what I mean? So that's
like it's how
art,
like
you know,
like
I
hot,
don't like.
like, or is it cold? Cold doesn't exist. It's just the absence of hot.
Correct.
Or something like that. Yeah. So on that same page, I highlighted in that sense, the Western definition of craft closely matches the Eastern definition of art. In Eastern cultures, art that faithfully carries forward the traditions of an elder master is honored. In the West, it is put down as derivative.
Right.
And that is not to say that Eastern art does not allow for, I'm trying not to use the C word, innovation and newness, but it is still within the confines of this is what this is, you know? Right. So if you've ever looked at painting or videos of Japanese silk painters who are using, you know, ash resist to either, or, you know, they're painting silk fans or things like that. There's beautiful, beautiful art that they're creating using traditional techniques and methods. And yes, they're using, you know, maybe traditional motifs in terms of, you know, florals and whatnot. But you compare their work with, you know, stuff that was being done with the same techniques hundreds of years ago, it's still different work. It's not carbon copies. So like, I liked this quote because I saw it as we're honoring the techniques. We're honoring some of the traditions in terms of, you know, themes and motifs and things like that, but there's still room for play and innovation, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe we could benefit a little bit more from that. But
if they would have if they'd have had this thing, they would have used it. You know, if they'd have had different tools, they might have used those different tools. They're doing it this way because that's how the tools they had. So when we bring it into bring that olden thing into our modern day, we're going to do it slightly differently, even if we're recreating their exact thing because we have different tools.
I don't know if that holds true to what we're talking about with the Eastern crafts, because literally the emphasis is on doing it the same way.
Some of it is. You're right. You're correct.
Yeah, it depends on what it is. It depends on what it is. But a lot, especially like the textile stuff is, and like there's this whole push right now with the China National Silk Museum to like create the same loom that was used so that they could create the silk again. Right. So it's very much focused on learning from the old master, right? And doing it the same way that he did. You might make a different drawing, but you're using the same brushes and you're using the same inks and you're using the same paper and you're holding it the same way, you know, and to some degree, you know, does that narrow the box of what's possible for you? Sure. Because you learned from him, you know. One of the bits in here, I don't know if we skipped it, when we popped over to craft, was talking about Beethoven's early works sound a lot like his teachers.
Correct.
Because he learned from him, you know, and it takes time to sort of stretch your wings, as it were, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, really.
Agreed. Which I think, so there's a quote there too. There's a Zen proverb suggests, for the beginner there are many paths, for the advanced there are few. Because as you sort of find your thing at the very beginning, you have a lot of options. As you sort of find your niche or whatever, your options narrow a bit. I think the SCA does a good job for us about keeping our options open, because we can always sort of go back to the beginning and reopen our pathways. Which I think is really cool, because most of us are doing this as a hobby, so we're not worried about it professionally. If you're doing this professionally, you sort of have to hone in and then create your art, whatever, to then produce your livelihood. We don't have that problem generally.
Well, and even within the Laureate, I mean, there's such a huge, you know, there are so many people who, you know, you got laureled for doing X, but then, you know, you took a little bit of a breather because you frankly need to after you get elevated. It's just kind of required. And when you came back, you know, maybe you continued doing that same thing that you were doing before, but maybe you decided to pick up something completely different. Maybe you decided to try out being a bard. Maybe you started fighting. Maybe you did pottery. Maybe you did, I don't know, metalworking. You just decided to do something else for a while. And you got really good at that, you know, because because you know how to listen to your art.
Right.
So I think that the fact that we allow space for that is really cool.
Great.
Do we want to pop back?
Yep. So I have one on 82, 82 and 83 are my next two back there.
Do you have a rabbit one?
I do.
The rabbit. Talk about the rabbit. I'm going to let a puppy dog outside.
All right, go with puppy dog. So, and this is a relatively short one, but as the old proverb cautions, if you chase two rabbits, you chase neither. So when I read this, it was
you catch neither.
You catch neither. Sorry. Honestly, you chase neither. Frankly, I think that's also accurate.
Yeah. Well, this is talking, and this whole section is talking about the academic world and teaching and art making and how you balance how so many people go into teaching because paycheck, and how you balance a full-time teaching load and also making art, and how does that work?
Which is funny that again we do this as a hobby, and so much of us have a full-time job that is not related to this hobby, and they're then trying to take a full-time art career on the side of it and become a Laurel, to become a Knight, to become a mod, whatever.
Right.
It's a whole thing. It's
intensive. This is why in my apprentice contract I had work-life balance in there. Literally.
It's important.
It said something like, I'm really bad at, balancing family and obligations, and I'm going to make that a thing. I'm going to make that a priority to make sure that stays balanced. And I'm glad I had it in there because I feel like there's a misconception among a lot of people who are seeking peerage, whether that's Shiv, Mod, Pel, Laurel, whatever, that you have to do super crazy, and you have to go to every single event. You have to do this, and you're just on all the time. And especially with the pandemic, and we were already as a game, as a society, very much online, right? But that really got thrust into the limelight with the pandemic work because that was our only option. And when things are not just, a weekly fighter practice or a monthly ANS night or, an event on the weekend, when it's literally every day on Facebook, that can be incredibly draining, especially when you have a full-time job that is not at all related to the SCA, because I think how many people does the SCA in the US actually employ? 3?
3 or 4.
It's 3 or 4 people. Many. I'm not one of them. It's okay. I don't want to be. It's fine. But it's a hobby. But when it leached into, this is not a bad thing, but when the online thing became so much more the forefront of things, I worried a lot about people getting burnt out, because you need to be able to step away and you need to be able to do other things. You need to be able to feel like you can go and do art that's not SCA related, whether that's a sewing thing or a drawing thing or a beading thing or a music thing. If you keep yourself in this pre-16th century box all the time, that's going to wear on you after a while. If I'm not saying you have to get out of the box. If you're happy in the box, stay in the box. I'm just saying, don't nail yourself in.
Right. Leave the door cracked a little, maybe.
Leave it a little bit open. It'll get drafty, or it'll get stuffy in there. You want a little bit of air circulation.
First of all, don't get in the box, people.
Please do not nail yourself inside of boxes. It's just good general advice.
Speaking of teaching, so I think
yes,
as a person that's in the SCA, and I love teaching personally. I teach because that's how I learn things, and I've heard from other people who I know do amazing art from their laurels that they don't teach enough. What? That's required? That's a thing? Okay, cool. That's a thing. Yep. Apparently,
it's a thing. It's in the description.
There are some cool things about teaching, I think, and there's 2 quotes here. Teaching, so it allows you to draw energy from young minds filled with potential, and then teaching is part of the process of being an artist.
That made me think of energy vampires, honestly. Yeah. It's
very much. It's excitement, right? So
it's really what it is. It's
I can only get so excited about my thing But when I can toss out little tidbits of it and the ducks come scurrying, yay! And then I
Well,
get
it's not even just that. It's very similar to the, you know, the kick you in the ass kind of inspiration that I was describing earlier. But it's, you know, if you have a student who is doing something really cool, and they're telling you about it, and then, you know, you go, oh, wow, you're doing some really cool stuff. What the fuck am I doing? Where's the paste? You know?
Let me eat this thing on.
It's yummy. What is his name? It's gonna destroy me. Okay. Anyway, I highlighted on that page. You gain as much from the interchange. If you teach, you know that you gain as much from the interchange as do your students. But that's just a sort of.
Honestly, I would argue most time the teacher gains more out of that equation. I know I have personally.
I think it depends on it depends on the relationship for sure.
Right.
And it depends on the topic that you're doing. What the heck is okay? Somebody in chat, because I know you're out there. The little boy in The Simpsons who eats paste, and like there's the gif of him on the bus, and he's like, "I'm in danger." That little boy.
He's the chief.
What is his name? Yes, he's Ralph Wiggum. Ralph Wiggum. Yeah. Ralph Wiggum. Thank you. You said Police's son, and I got a last name, and that helped me.
There you go.
Baby Wiggum is me.
All right. We're just over an hour, and damn it, we're finishing.
I know. We're gonna finish this. I'm trying to find my next highlight. My next one is on 91.
I've got one on 90. It's a quick one though.
Hey, there you go.
To the artist, art is a verb.
Yep.
Done.
Yep.
Do the thing. It's a verb. It's not
because,
a noun.
And this is in relation, yeah, because there's like to someone who's viewing art, to the critic, yeah. Art is a noun.
Right.
Like art's not a noun. Art's a verb. Art's a thing you do. It creates I had the one art class I took in undergrad that I had to take, which I was sad. I wanted to take like a drawing class, but only art majors could take those classes. I had to take like a stupid survey class, just didn't like, but whatever. I should have just picked up an art minor, but past Marty did, or alternate universe Marty did that. But he was so sticky about like what you called a finished piece, work of art. And he's like, well, you don't call it a piece, and you don't call it I can't remember what his favorite term was, but ever since that I've always been like, do I call it a piece of art or a work of art or what do you call it? I guess it depends on what it is. Is it painting? Is it a sculpture? Is it a etching? So he lives rent free in my head.
You got a decade later. With that. It's an etching. It's an etching. Yeah.
It's an etching. Well, that was a don't you remember all of those old, like, would you like to come up and see my etchings? Like no. Things. Oh my God. It's a thing from like old movies or whatever. And it's like, would you like to see my etchings? Like, let me trap you in a room. It's like, so would you see the slideshow from my vacation?
Okay. Anybody watching, that's my new pickup line. If you hear me ask you if you want to see my etchings.
Do you want to see my etchings?
It's not, I'm not talking about etchings.
There are people in the SCA who do etchings and they're awesome. It's a really cool art form. They're fun.
That's not what I'm going to
do. I don't have any. Anyway.
Best pickup line ever.
Yes. So mine on 91 is talking about a remark that Ezra Pound made, that the one thing he learned from viewing a good piece of art was that other artists had done his job well, and thus he, Pound, was freed to explore another direction. I don't know if that's really an SCA thing necessarily, because, we're kind of like all in each other's biz.
I think it's the exact opposite actually for us.
Yeah.
And it's just because somebody's done the Thorsberg trousers 1,000 times doesn't mean
you still do them.
You're right. Yeah.
Because you are going to learn something about them, right. You personally, that you could only ever learn by doing it your dang self, as opposed to reading somebody else's write-up or seeing somebody else's trousers. You doing it yourself, you're going to your brain is going to go, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. Or, well, what about this?
There's new data now. There's new stuff we have today that we didn't have 10 years ago,
right?
Or 20 years ago, or even 5 years ago, for that matter. that may change what you might find out something new.
Mm-hmm.
So
yep.
So yeah, so I think we have to go the exact opposite of that route, honestly.
Right. Well, I just think it was an interesting, not from an SCA perspective, but from like a modern art perspective. Going
well, yeah,
like,
it's a you've done that
because I don't know if I agree with it, because I think that there is this big push of it has to be original. It has, and that goes back to the whole East-West perspectives on things too. Like if it's not original, don't bother. Just don't waste your time. Like. What I want to draw goofy pictures. Leave me alone. Like, I want to make stupid alphabet word bracelets that have Latin on them because I'm a nerd. I want to do it. I like my bracelets. Shut up.
I like your bracelets too. Don't be mean to me. You're a nerd. I'm just agreeing with you.
It's okay. My next ones are on 92. Talking about. There are a couple other books that he talks about, like, and they're literally basically journals of artists, like day by day journals about like what their thought process is and what they're going through. And I think that's really interesting. And then there's another bit on here that I highlighted. An ancient tenet in Chinese painting holds that the master paints not the created thing, but the forces that created it.
And then likewise, the best writing about art depicts not the finished piece, but the process that created it. So in our case, I think that's super applicable to us.
Yeah.
Because the idea of the pants are the pants. Again, pants don't talk. For us,
it's how you got there.
Process is the important part.
From a Laurel perspective, that's always the more interesting piece of the puzzle is how you got there. Tell me about your journey.
Right.
In how you made those pants or that rosary or whatever the F it is I'm looking at, like I want to know what you learned from doing this and then what you're going to do next, because that shows growth.
Right.
You want to game the game. That's how you make this Laurel happy when you write documentation. That and footnotes. Sorry.
So on that same vein, the idea of looking at the process, but also sort of working through other people's things, right? So I'm redoing someone else's work, or I'm looking at someone else's work, or I'm doing parts of someone else's work. I think there's an interesting concept that I found, that it's easier to paint in the angel's feet to another master's work than to discover where the angels live within yourself. It's on 96, 97. So I'm very much like, I don't like original work because I like sort of having, I guess I like having a box to work within, and it's why I really enjoy it's why I enjoy the challenges, right? I enjoy having some sort of set guidelines to work within,
right?
So in that case, it's whereas it's not a coloring book per se, it gives me some sort of direction.
Yeah, because without that, it's kind of scary,
right?
Because you don't know. You can make a thing, and you have to then find a venue to put it in, right? Whether that's a display or just, from an SCA context, you stick it in your camp or you put it on your body, whatever the nature of it is, you carry it around with you.
Put it in your blog that nobody ever looks at.
Right. So it's like, you're not guaranteed necessarily that same exposure. I had one before that bit that was, again, on the concept of challenges and whatnot, that artists who need ongoing reassurance that they're on the right track, raising my hand there, routinely seek out challenges that offer the clear goals and measurable feedback, which is to say technical challenges, which is what that is, and that's not a bad thing. That's just recognizing that this is wherever you are in your journey. That's what you need, and that helps build up that confidence, especially when you have to write the way that our technical challenges are in the terms of, you write your documentation and you basically have to lay everything out there and like completely dump your brain. You get a lot more confident about what you know. You do and you don't. Like you're like, yes, I know this. And then you're like, oh wait, do I? Where was that actually written down? Like, did I dream that? Like, is that actually?
I've done that a lot. I'll go to teach a class, like I'm saying a thing, like, where do you learn that? I'm like, I don't know. I know it's true somewhere. It's
somewhere. I know. And but then you second guess yourself and it's really scary. It happens and it's scary. But getting that level of confidence that's like actually earned confidence and not Daring Kruger confidence comes from putting yourself out there and getting that feedback and getting that reassurance of, yes, you're doing good, you're doing good, you're doing good. You know, when you first pick up any sort of craft, let's go that way, knitting, crocheting, sewing, woodworking, you know, it is way easier to learn that sitting next to somebody or being in a workshop with somebody who already knows how to do it,
right.
Who can look over at you and say, you're doing that right. Or who can say, what the heck are you doing? Put that down. You're going to saw your finger off. You know, I mean, yeah, just someone, so a system, a support network of a person or people to catch you before you fall or sever a limb. So, yeah.
Yep.
And we get into, we already did a little bit of the crafty stuff.
Next section is craft. I have to bring up one quote right after the C word page. And I highlighted this one, not because it was profound in the sense of this book, but I went, ooh, when I read it and Kisa told me I had to highlight it. It's talking about when much as users of certain psychotropic drugs become mesmerized once they notice that every blade of grass is moving.
Growing.
Whatever. It's moving too.
Yeah.
Every blade of grass is growing. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah. Because it's about noticing things.
Right. Like I had to sit with that for a second because I was like, I'm not okay anymore. Like for a hot minute, I was like, that's a thing. And I'm not even high. Like,
well, I mean, and you could argue that this is in part, and they talk about this a little bit, you know, about how artists tend to be a little bit more sort of out there in terms of personality and whatnot. But I mean, if you're already attuned to notice things that other people aren't noticing in order to fuel your art and your inspiration, you're gonna be on the fringes, you know. You are.
It's interesting doing things with Sifa. So Sifa is a traditional artist. So she's a painter, and Kisa paints as well, and she does scroll work. But Sifa comes at it much more from a background of art, like in actual like she's painted paintings and things. It's really interesting doing things with her, going out in public, going to downtown museums and buildings, because there's like I'm looking at like how the building's put together and looking at that's the cool thing I recognize like that has religious significance. She's noticing like construction of faces and how would I paint that? And oh look, there's this cool spirally thing that's the perfect spiral thing. Like I
like the Fibonacci.
Yeah. Things I would never notice because I'm not that sort of artist. I've never trained that sort of art. She has, and she's done those things. Like I don't recognize colors like she does. Like she's breaking down color theory in her head of how would I recreate that color on the wheel of the house. I'm like, I don't know. It looks like a blue to me. You know, she's like mixing.
Well, she's also noticed, but that's the thing. She's also probably noticing how colors are paired and, you know, the schemes that are put together. But yeah, that's a whole thing too. I go into clothing stores and I like, especially Anthropologie, and I reverse engineer things.
Right. How would I make this work? Yeah.
How would I put this together? Because I'm not spending $125 on it. Like, and then I walk away going, I would spend at least that in fabric, so it's just not worth it.
Which and I do with good things. Like when I see a new shelf, I'm like, I could build that. I can, but yeah, it's gonna cost me more than that $100 to just buy the damn thing.
And it is gonna probably 4 trips to the hardware store and 2 days. And is it really worth that?
Right. At least one finger is gonna get lost at some point in there.
Oh my God! Don't lose fingers.
I've got 10 of them. It's fine.
But I love this. Yeah, in that same vein, I highlighted notice the objects you notice. You know, just notice.
I think that's a self-awareness thing. So I was talking to my therapist about that actually.
This is not therapy. It's a very good book, and you should read it. This is not therapy.
Right. I have a therapist. I talked to my therapist about this. But yeah, I think noticing when things happen. So not just noticing, oh look, there's a cool thing. It's noticing when I reacted to situations and how I reacted differently. Like sort of when I self-corrected was a thing I needed to notice that I noticed it. And like sort of document it in my head, which is a thing.
And I've been doing something similar lately where I'll know that I've behaved differently in an interaction, and I'll be like, hey, I saw that this was going in this direction, and I self-corrected, and I said something, or I did something differently, and then I'm like, mental gold star, like,
Ding.
Good for me, or good for that other person who responded positively to me when I actually, like, gold star said something and changed the direction of the conversation before it went to shit. So, yeah.
I can't say I've done that this week, but yes, that's a thing. Also,
give yourself the freedom to give yourself a gold star.
My wife is picking on me about my 3-day project of shelves.
Those are important.
We have library shelves that I took 3 months to build, not the 3 days I originally planned for them. Yes.
So my next highlight is more about derivative work, because this one hit me a little bit hard as the sketchbook kid in middle school.
Yep.
Many people first respond deeply to art, indeed respond deeply to the world, upon finding works of art that seem to speak directly to them. Small surprise then, if upon setting out to make art themselves, they begin by emulating the art or artist that brought this revelation. So as a sketchbook kid, and in the very early days of Elfwood, if you remember Elfwood on the internet. Do you remember Elfwood?
I know, because I'm less old than you.
Oh, that's right. You are less old than me. So Elfwood was a, before DeviantArt existed, a gallery type situation for visual art and stories, poems, etc. that were all fantasy. So like you wouldn't go there for like, Space Marine stuff. It was all dragons and fairies and elves and fantasy stuff. And so of course I never read any, but at that time, but I fell in love with art from like Dragon Riders of Pern and Dragonlance and all of those wonderful things, because those covers were just beautiful. And then fell into Elfwood, and of course had my 5 or 6 artists on Elfwood who I thought were amazing, like Stephanie Plum and all those wonderful people. And I wanted to be just like them, little middle school Marty. And so, yeah, what you draw at that point is going to look a lot like that. If you're super into anime as a kid and you are an artistic kid, that's what you're going to emulate. Right. And I remember as a child, when I got even into sort of like the kiddo art world of just my peers who also did stuff. And I was like, oh, well, you can't trace. Like, you can't trace. No, tracing's bad. Okay, yeah, tracing's bad because you can't just copy somebody else's art and try to claim it as your own. That's super bad. But at the same time, like, it's okay fan art is okay. Like, I literally listened to teachers tell kids that fan art was not art. Can you imagine somebody doing that in this day and age? Like,
they still do.
Do they? Okay, yeah. I wasn't sure if that was still a thing, because fan art has come a long way. Yeah. But it was like, this isn't your character. It's like,
right. Okay, anything derivative is still not is by some people not considered art because it is
super frowned upon.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but why can't art also be collaborative? You know what I mean? Like,
it's similar to the idea of like of D&D.
You're not merchant, right?
Running a module of somebody else wrote. You're still going to put your spin on it. You're still going to adjust it. It's still going to be your performance of it, even though someone else did the book work for you.
Well, and your players are going to make different decisions. It's not railroaded. I mean, they could decide to do something completely different, and now you've got to. This is not an appropriate time, ma'am. It's not. I know it's not. Sorry.
I was like, dog or Zippy? I can't tell. Let's find out.
Oh, Zippy is asleep. So.
You say that till a Fatechild comes floating through the screen. With her flamingos.
Oh, gracious. Yeah. So I highlighted that because it struck a chord personally with me in terms, because I was that kid,
right.
And it was that sort of, I hope it's better for kids today. I don't know. And yes, and you bring up a really great point. They did. And there's a lovely quote from Sinini that I have in my Tracing is Period class about how you need to copy the masters and be picky about what you copy, because just as I'm butchering it, but it's, if you train yourself to pick flowers and no thorns, you'll only pick flowers. And there's a section in here we talk about habits, and on page 103, Once developed, art habits are deep-seated, reliable, helpful, and convenient. Moreover, habits are stylistically important. In a sense, habits are style. You know, so if you find somebody that draws really great noses. Noses are hard. You find somebody who draws super great noses, and you effectively place yourself at their digital feet, and you copy their noses and try to like, not like tracing, but like copy their noses. You look at their tutorials. You figure out how to draw noses from this person, right? And eventually you're going to create habits, those sort of muscle memory on how you make noses. And you're going to tweak it occasionally, and you're not going to always make noses directly like that person, because again, Beethoven doesn't sound just like his teacher, but that nose is eventually just going to become your style, because it is the habit that you've created.
Right.
I do a lot of Romanesque stuff in Scribble because I like the portraiture in Romanesque and like early Gothic. They're kind of super cartoony and they're just fun. But it's a style. And this is why I love that as scribes, we sort of bounce around and do all kinds of periods all the time. I think it's a lot of fun. But at the same time, I really think that scribes benefit from sort of seating themselves in a bracket, right? Because you can get really, really good at one thing, right? You can get really, really good at white vine. You can get really, really good at squash bug, the super, super late, like super realistic stuff that I can't. It's hard. I have a lot of respect for those people. You can get really, really good at the early period stuff, whether it's got knotwork in it or not. That's a whole different style, you know? And just because it's simple doesn't mean it's not hard, right? For the record.
Yeah, knotwork is in fact the devil.
I'm not even talking about knotwork. I'm not even talking about knotwork. Like some of the way the animals in Kells are done, not even the knotted ones, just the straight up ones. I mean, that getting the circles right, getting the swoops right and the angles. I mean, it's muscle memory. You're building muscle memory. And the more you do it, the easier it gets for all of those reasons. I know I'm talking too much.
No, I'm sorry. I'm drifting in the, yeah, that's a thing.
It's a thing.
I'm ingesting it going, yeah, that's a thing.
And I'm sure that it's I know it's applicable to Scribble. I can't imagine how it's not applicable to other arts. Like, I don't know how, like with Bardic, if you do how, I don't know, you used to practice your stuff.
So like I sing songs that other people have written. So like Master Matthias, super good bard here in Meridies. He's written a couple songs, and I love singing his songs. I sing them differently than he does. I know that because I sang one with him the other day, and it was weird. Because he matched me because I started it, and but I realized he was singing it differently. I watched him sing it, so I know how he sings it, but I'm gonna do it differently because it's me. But it's still his writing. So his song, right. So I'm forced into somewhat of a box for that song because of how it's written.
Okay, but at the same time, SCA Bardic very, very rarely gets actually written down like with staff notation.
Oh yeah, no, it's just
so like you're learning it by ear, right, and memorizing it. So there's going to be variations. When I sing "Fruit of the U" to my kids, because it's a bedtime song for us, because why wouldn't it be? It's a song about killing raiders in Wales. It's fine. It's a good song.
You keep talking, and Zippy makes so much more sense to me.
We sing "Fruit of the U" and we sing Malcolm's Ride. You don't know Malcolm's Ride? I will send you Malcolm's Ride.
Okay, so I heard "Fruit of the U." I've heard Malcolm's Ride.
Malcolm's Ride is about fleeing the assassins who killed Macbeth. Or not Macbeth, Macduff. It's Macbeth's assassins that killed Macduff. So it's sending. Right. Yeah, it's all that. So anyway, it's fun. There's lots of murder in our lullabies, apparently. It's the thing. Anyway, but my point was, I sing it the way that I learned it, and I went to go like record it for something, and I was trying to find like someone else who sang it, and the other people that I found who sang it, they did something different, like the way the verses, like some of the verses go down and some of the verses go up. I don't know, you've heard the song, I'm assuming. And then the guy who actually wrote it, whose name is escaping me right now, and I feel really bad about that, he sings it a lot slower than like anybody else. And I'm like, it's a long song. So like, I can't sing it that slow. So I mean, you're going to make changes. And I think that the Bardic community, at least from what I've experienced of it, is pretty open to that. I've only experienced a couple people who are like, you're, especially in a Bardic circle, who've been like, you sang that wrong. I'm like, no, I didn't. I'm good. Thanks.
There are a couple of songs.
No.
So Born on the Listfield is a good example of this.
Yeah.
Born on the Listfield is a song that there is some slight variation, but it's the same song sung the same way. Now, the funny
but
part
that's usually sung with a bunch of people, though. But people don't solo that. So
right, and it's funny because if you actually listen to the song, it's changed a dozen times because oral tradition does that.
Yeah, it does.
The song is going to change because oral. So the one we sing here in Meridies is very different than what they sing in Artemisia. I know. Mm-hmm. I discovered that. I was like, that's a different song that I've heard before. Hold on. But it does.
I love that though. That's amazing. That's a whole nother. Somebody should do that project. I would love to see more SCA anthropology type entries just in the world. I want to see, you know, how different people sing the same song across different kingdoms. I'm just curious. You know, it'd be great. Anyway, ethnographic research right there.
Oh, big words. Calm down. All right, so I've got so 105 is my next one, and
okay, yeah, you go ahead. My next one's on 107. So
cool. Yeah, I've got 105. I think I guarantee we have the same thing on 107.
Probably.
So, it's discussing whether science and art, comparing the two, which rang for me because of how
I thought you'd like that thing. Yeah.
So talking about science has to be a given experiment can be repeated with identical results, therefore it's science. An art piece can be remade with identical results, then it's not art. Ooh, that's a thing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you can trace the thing and recreate it exactly. So a lot of my art that I do is digital. Mm-hmm. And it is recreated. So I can push the same button 1,000 times now on my laser and it produces the exact same thing. The original creation is still art. The pieces that come out of it are not. And that's a really interesting concept.
It really is. It really is.
Because I think I agree with it. Yeah. I agree with the science art distinction because that makes sense to me.
It does, but I also think that especially when you get into sort of the rapid prototyping stuff, like the laser stuff and the cricket,
all that stuff that did not
all of that stuff didn't exist when it existed, but it wasn't as prolific as it is now. I mean, they weren't sitting in people's homes like they are today. But I think that the art then can maybe potentially be reinserted or recovered. I don't really like that word, but we're going with it. With iterations. So like you have a design, right? That you're going to burn out of or onto something. Right. And so, okay, if you do it and then you decide I'm going to do it 15 times out of pine, right? Okay. Like one of them, cool. And then you've got the other 14. And then maybe you decide that you're going to do it out of leather.
Right.
Does the leather one cease to be art? It's a new material. And then what about printmaking? The whole entire point of printmaking is you're making a block, whether it's, you know, linoleum or wood or any number of different ways that they do, you know, printmaking. Blocks, and you are creating a series of prints from that thing you carved or etched or whatever.
In that case, the actual application is still art because there is skill required. And admittedly, I guess there is skill in using the laser, right? Because I had to learn to use this specialized tool.
And if you use different materials, you have to change the settings.
Right. And so there is some skill. So yeah, I can, you know, I could be argued down. And I guess from an artist's side, there is the idea of I made this painting and then created prints of it for sale purposes, right?
Right.
is that print less art because it's a copy of a painting?
I think it's like a scale thing because, the first time that, Georgia Tech has a competition every year. It's like a flat pack competition. And it's like, I think it's chair, right? Like you have to make a chair and it has to be able to pack flat or something. I don't know. It's chair. And I forget what department it is. It's like industrial design, maybe. I don't know. They make a chair. So, okay, cool. The first chair, totally art, right? Art. It's chair, like design went into it, thought process went into it. From a fashion perspective, we watch all the fashion shows, right? The first thing that they make and they send down the runway, arguably art, right? But when does that cease to be art? Is it when JCPenney picks it up and they've made, 500,000 of them?
Right.
Or is it when they decide to commercialize their line and they, hire a seamstress and they made 100 of them? Like where do we draw that line? And I don't know.
So by this definition, it's the repeatability is
yeah. I mean, well, but at what point? So is it mass production or is it small scale? Like where is that line? And does it? I mean, I know it matters, but at the same time, I have no problem looking at my mass-produced acrylic cup from Kroger and appreciating the art that went into that.
Right.
Like, what's the line from Devil Wears Prada about cerulean blue and the sweater? Like, even your sweater that you bought at TJ Maxx or whatever on clearance, there was still thought that went into that, at some point in its life. Right. And I think that that's something that is worthy of being noticed. Anyway.
Yeah. No, I think I think it's you look back at the original creation of the thing is art. The piece you purchased is not a piece of art because it's a duplication that is now repeatable. Therefore, it's science. By this definition,
I guess. I mean, I'm still going to enjoy the art prints that I have as art. Like,
right. Yeah, I'm not trying to discredit anybody's art or their enjoyment of it. I have plenty of it myself. I get you. That's by that definition it works. So
yeah.
All right. 107. All art is autobiographical.
Yeah, that's what I have.
We're like twins.
Yeah.
And I think that just we've talked about that a bunch. All art is autobiographical. It is you.
It is you. It only the tools only do what you tell them to do. The words that you type only type because you type them.
Right.
It's you.
Computers are in fact stupid. They only do what you tell them to do.
Hi puppy. Bye puppy.
All right, 109. I highlighted the Zen teaching. You want
to? Yeah, me too. It's really good. When you start on a long journey, trees are trees, water is water, and mountains are mountains. After you have gone some distance, trees are no longer trees, water no longer water, mountains no longer mountains. But after you have traveled a great distance, trees are once again trees, water is once again water, mountains are once again mountains. So I think that's
so for me. There's one word of context. Is what rang for you. That is it. When you're so close to something, you lose context for it.
Yeah.
I think that's there's a couple other teachings in that, I'm sure, but you get lost in things you're so close. You
get lost, and you care about them differently.
Right.
Your perspective is skewed, and sometimes that's okay, and sometimes that's not right. But then once you walk a little bit more, things kind of fall back into where they should be. So,
the old adage of you can't see the forest for the trees.
Yep.
Because again, context.
My next highlight is, where is it? Oh gosh, on 118. Really?
Ooh, I've got a 113 and a 116. So, all right. So this is the last chapter. Is the human voice.
Yes.
First of all, I love Picasso's quote. Computers are useless. All they can give you is answers.
This is about asking questions.
Yeah, I was like,
all chapters about asking questions.
They will give you answers. It may not be what you want to hear, but they will give you answers. And I was like, that's a thing.
Don't eat the fireplace. What is wrong with you?
Okay, you looked at the camera and said that. I was like, I don't get that. Hold on.
Sorry, this dog right there.
I was like, I'm not eating the fireplace.
She was like, had her nose like up against it and was doing that big like huffy snuffles. Like, what are you doing? Dog.
All right, so answers are reassuring, but when you're onto something really useful, it will probably take the form of a question. I've noticed that thing, especially in my SCA like art journey, in that I often don't find answers. I find the next question.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's the next thing is that.
Well,
not everything is
because even
don't eat the fireplace. That's a metaphor. It's a new. Don't eat the fireplace.
Please don't try. God.
Oh, that's a new life lesson.
Why? Why are you? Why are you?
You're gonna be in my elevation one day, Ouyang. I'm gonna be like, and Cal, remember, don't eat the fireplace.
Pants don't talk.
Pants don't talk, and don't eat the fireplace. Yeah, so I think the idea of answers often are questions in our context, which is interesting because I think that's how we learn more, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you have answers, you're like, okay, I'm done now. Once you have an answer, you're done.
But even an answer is like, so if the question is how was this made, right? And the answer is it was made this way. I feel more comfortable with was it made this way? Like, because you don't know until you try to make it that way.
Right.
Right. And then you find out, hey, that kind of worked, or maybe it didn't work. And now you've got to figure out something else. Or questions.
Let's see.
You said 117?
116. The only work really worth doing, the only work you can do convincingly, is the work that focuses on the things you care about.
Mm-hmm.
Do the things you like. Mm-hmm. I don't care if it's not in the rubric. I don't care if 1,000 people have done it. I don't care if there's not a category for you, Cal. Do the things you like.
Do the thing you like. Do the thing that brings you joy and that brings joy to others. Because the joy you see in others they're reflecting you.
Right.
They see how cool you think it is and how much fun you're getting out of it, and they're like, they mirror that back. So do that.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, and 118 will end us out.
118. Today, more than it was however many years ago, art is hard because you have to keep after it so consistently on so many different fronts for so little external reward.
Yep.
I'll just keep going. Artists become veteran artists only by making peace, not just with themselves, but with a huge range of issues. You have to find your work all over again, all the time. And to do that, you have to give yourself maneuvering room on many fronts: mental, physical, temporal. Experience consists of being able to reoccupy useful space easily and instantly. So that's a thing that exists.
That is a quote.
Yeah.
All right. So this book, first of all, read it. I think this is a good book.
Yes.
It's relatively simple. I was not looking forward to this book when you pitched it. I was like, it's an art book. I don't get it. I'm glad I read it.
I'm glad you did.
I picked up a lot more stuff than I thought I would in this, and it's why I enjoy doing this series, because it's forced me out of my comfort zone. I think there's a lot in here for artists. Obviously, there's traditional art. We've discussed that. But there's a lot in here for the SCA context. I think there's
a lot in there for SCA context. And if you just have, whether you do art your own self, we've convinced Cal that things that he does are art that he didn't think were.
I'm down.
But if you've got artists in your life, whether they're your partner or your friends, this will help you understand their brain a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Because it is something, when they set out to write this book, and they talked about it in the last bit, they were like, it was the whole like, well, what do all these artists have in common? Because it's literally not just, they talk a lot about visual art, but one of them is an author, not just this book, but like other books. They talk about photography, they talk about sculpture, they talk about performing arts, they talk about a lot of different kind of art. So it's in there, trust me. It's a good book. You should read it. It's hard.
Right.
It's hard, and you will need to sit with it. but you will be the better for it. And this is, for me, it's like, it's going to sit on my shelf and be one of those books that I pull off, once every couple of years and just reread.
Right. Well, most of these lessons are iterative, because just like the art in this, how I read it today will be different than how I read it in a year.
Oh, because you're going to be a different person in a year. Right. Yeah.
It's all the concept is different in how I read it versus how you read it. Obviously, we got different things out of this. A lot of it we lined up on, which is not surprising. But there's a lot of things that I picked up that were different, and how it hit me was different, and that's going to change. And again, even tomorrow is going to be different. So
don't read it again tomorrow. Give yourself some space.
Give some space. Yeah, give some space. I'm not going to tell you I finished reading it about 4 hours ago, but I did. So when did you finish reading it? Huh?
On my lunch break.
Nice. We're such twins.
I'm so bad.
All right. All right. Couple of things coming up with Kalbardr's Corner. Obviously, every Sunday we've got. So next Sunday we'll have Rekindling the Magic, and we should have an episode of Road to Retention, but I don't have it scheduled because Ramoot is going to be traveling. I'm trying to get a guest for that. So if you've got somebody who is a retention person, somebody you think brings people to the SCA, brings them back, keep them here, send them to me. We love having recommendations, and I'll throw that up on there. I'm also going to be scheduling 2 new episodes of Coffee with Cal. Next Sunday, I'll be ranting about rule number 1. There are 2 of them. Don't be a dick and have fun.
Okay.
So rule number 1 and 1.5. It's Wheaton's rule number 1 and then Cal's rule number 1.
Yeah.
Depending on which approach you're going with. And then also at the end of this month, I will be traveling to West Ontario War, or Keith and I will be traveling to, Ontario West War. They get really upset if you say it the wrong way. There should be a Coffee with Cal episode that weekend, but I'm going to have to pre-record it because apparently the signal on site is ethereal, doesn't exist. So we are going to pre-record it, but we're going to talk about the Cropeau. And I'm going to be joined by some of the angels and talking about the Cropeau and where it came from. So look forward to that coming up. It will be pre-recorded, however. Sorry about that. Other than that, keep subscribing, keep looking, keep liking the things, poke the buttons wherever the hell they are on here. Ouyang, you're amazing.
Aww, you're pretty cool too.
No. Thank you for this. Thank you for this book. Thank you for recommending this. Looking forward to the next one you throw at me. Those out there watching, if you've got a book you think we should read, I should read, you want to come read it with me, pitch it to me. Toss me a message. Let's talk about it. I think this series will continue to be rotating hosts and weird random books. So,
not that random. It was pretty good.
Any final thoughts from you there, Ouyang?
This was a lot of fun. So thank you for having me on in the various places that I decided to sit down with my computer. Go to the different spot every time. No, you're like 3 spots. It's fine. But no, this was a lot of fun, and thank you for doing this. This was really cool, and I look forward to the next one.
My pleasure as always, and thank you all out there for watching. But for now, this has been Ouyang and Cal in Kalbardr's Corner. Have a good night, everybody.